what is going to most lead to your child, son or daughter's future happiness is not their career. It's not their advanced degree. The thing that's going to be the most predictive of their future happiness is whether they're married and if they're in a good marriage. If you're in a good marriage, you are more than 500% more likely to say that you're very happy in life. The happiest people in society on average are married people with kids. But I am telling you, you shouldn't go to college with the premeditated decision that you will not meet your spouse.
Hey, Liberty Spenders. Today, I am thrilled to welcome JP De Gance to Liberty Spenders. JP is the founder and president of Communio, a groundbreaking nonprofit that's teaming up with churches all over the country to help strengthen marriages, families, and faith communities. Before launching Communio nationwide, he led an ambitious $20 million project that actually helped reduce the divorce rate in Jacksonville, Florida by an incredible 24% in just 3 years, which we're definitely going to talk about. Under his leadership, Communio has become known for its innovative, data-driven approach, combining relationship support with gospel-centered teaching to reach singles and couples both inside and outside the church. His work and research have not only earned Communio awards like the Heritage Foundation's Innovation Prize, but have also sparked important conversations on how the decline of marriage and fatherhood is impacting faith in America. He's also the co-author of Endgame, the church's strategic move to save faith and family in America. JP, we're pumped to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Kurt, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I was excited about this because I had the same experience getting married that I think most people have, which is you fall in love, you decide to get married, and somebody says, good luck, hope you learned something from your parents, and off to the races, which seems crazy. You can't fix a toilet without a license. Not that we should license people to get married, but we provide so little support to couples for success. And then, of course, everything in society is saying, hey, this is a temporary arrangement, So to see what you've been able to do in Jacksonville with the big changes and the impact you're having is super exciting to me. So I'm pumped to have you to talk about this very important issue.
I think it is the issue, right? In so many ways. It shouldn't surprise you, Kurt, to hear me say that. But really, fundamentally, civilization is built built on top of the building block of the family. And it should surprise no one why the evil one has sought to destroy the marital embrace, because when you do that, you unwind civilization itself, right? I think we're in a moment of anthropological anarchy, rejecting sort of the core of what Western anthropology has been built on, which is the gospel, right? Christian anthropology, this idea that a man leaves his father and mother and cleaves to his wife, right? So it's a big deal, and then you zero in on it as just boy meets girl and goes off on an adventure, and they fall in love, and they start their own hero's journey from there. And we think of these, in so many ways, it might sound like a small thing, but it's actually fundamentally the biggest of things.
Yeah. Well, I know that you've done some interesting research connecting the decline in marriage and fatherhood to the decline in America. So at some level, that seems obvious to me, but I don't know that it's obvious to everyone, the connection there. How should people see that, the connection between the decline in marriage and the decline in society in general?
Yeah, we human capital, right? So there's you think about, Kurt, some terms that social scientists use studying the way societies function. And one of the biggest terms that they like to throw around is that term human capital. And it's the measure of all the things that the intangible things that you can do, your skills. The reality is the most efficient and best creator and formator of human capital is the married home. Okay. And so it's a big job to form a human being, right? It takes 18 to 26 years to launch one of those. And, and it's a two-person job fundamentally. It's a lot of work. And so having mom and dad in the picture really dramatically reduces the workload. And also there's huge complementarity, right? Despite what the world wants us to believe, mom and dad are different, right? You think about when you're teaching your kids to swim, mom is more frequently standing in the pool, child is clinging to the side of the pool, and mom is helping, son or daughter feel safe, puts her arms out and says, swim to me. And that's incredibly important. Kids need to learn that there's safety in the home, right? But then how does dad do it, right? Dad is going to hold the child and then throw the child out into the pool a bit, and the child's going to have to swim to the other side, right? And
Right.
dads are more wired to challenge us, right? To push us beyond our comfort zone. Neither are bad. Both are good. We need both, right? And you think about that as a microcosm of how we're formed, right? And throughout our lives, children, when we have mom and dad both present, they hear millions of more words by the time they get to kindergarten. So it has a
Yeah.
lifelong effect on their vocabulary, their educational attainment. All of these soft parts and hard parts of forming human capital are so much more effectively done when mom and dad are there. And then young boys learn to be men by seeing manhood modeled. So, there's a legion of ways. I was having a conversation years ago with Doug Ducey's chief of staff, Kirk Adams, and he sort of back of the envelope estimated this to me. This is maybe 2017, I think. And he said, I think 80% of Arizona's state government spending is the result of the breakdown of the family. That, when the government has to step in, there's three big things where spending goes up in. And you have to spend a lot more on education, you have to spend a lot more on medication, and you have to spend a lot more on incarceration. So there isn't a part of our society that isn't negatively or positively impacted by the health of the home or the lack thereof.
Yeah. Now, the most interesting thing that I've read about some of what you share is that you feel like sometimes well-meaning parents and pastors even accidentally make things worse, right?
Yeah.
So what are the traps that these people are falling into that are not contributing to the helpful approach to marriage?
Yeah, I think this is the first thing for anybody, let's say as a Christian, to recognize is that, we want to be in the world, but not of the world. We've heard that line oftentimes, but recognizing that we're swimming in the cultural waters that everybody else is in. And so it takes some added steps to recognize that when oftentimes we don't even realize it. We're oftentimes just repeating a lot of the wisdom of the world. And I'll give you an example. I was asked to speak at the David Network not long ago. It's a group of conservative Ivy League students and Ivy League alums. I was asked to speak on the family. I'm a state college guy myself, so I wasn't, I'm not an Ivy League kind of guy. I was looking at the group. These are folks, mostly Christians there. And we're talking on the panel. I just asked the whole group, I say, hey guys, how many of you have heard from parents that, you're in college now, focus on your studies, get that degree, get that advanced degree, worry about your career first, get that career going. And then once you're stable, once you're financially independent, then look around, start dating. That's when you get serious about relationships. And I looked out at the audience, a couple hundred kids there in this session, and about 70% of the room raised their hand that's what they've heard from their parents. This is a very common, post year 2000. Our parents very frequently have repeated, Christian parents have repeated over and over again the message of the world, which is, worry about, essentially your financial well-being before you worry about your relationship, right? So a couple big things about that. The reality is what is going to most lead to your child, son or daughter's future happiness is not their career. It's not their advanced degree. The thing that's going to be most predictive of their future happiness is whether they're married and if they're in a good marriage. Like nothing really comes close to it. If you're in a good marriage, you're more than 500% more likely to say that you're very happy in life than someone who just says, you've got high income, a good degree, a good career, fulfilling job, all that stuff. Okay. The happiest people in society on average are married people with kids. right?
Mm.
So if we know that to be true now, that's what, I'm told that you're supposed to trust the science, Kurt.
Right.
So if that's what the science says, okay, how we frequently as pastors and parents, how are we helping orient our child's imagination, what they're aspiring to, right? And frequently we're sort of accidentally repeating the wisdom of the world,
Right.
like those parents of these Ivy League students.
Yeah. I've heard people say it. I've had conversations with friends who aren't married yet, who are, well, I'm waiting. I've been dating this person for a long time, but I want to get some money in the bank first.
Yeah, Kurt, it's worth noting just on the college thing. And I told those kids, those students, I said, look, guys, I'm not telling you you got to marry somebody you meet in college. I'm not telling you have to, but I am telling you shouldn't go to college with the premeditated decision that you will not meet your spouse. So there's no time in your life where you'll be surrounded by more people who are close in age, where you're interacting with in real life, and who you can seek out those who share your values, right? And where you'll have the time to date them. Look, I understand you think your
Right.
15 credit hours a semester is overwhelming with all your studies. I'm going to tell you, when you're trying to, set off on your career and make partner, you're going to have a lot less time than you have
Right.
when you were in college. So the reality is by parents repeating this wisdom, they're making it less likely. One, you're delaying marriage. And my friend, Dr. Mark Regnerus, his own research shows that on average, for every year marriage is delayed, the likelihood of getting married at all goes down. So you're both essentially pushing your children into a situation where they're less likely to get married. And based on what I said earlier, means that your children are less likely to report that they're amongst the happiest Americans, right? If we care about our child, son or daughter's future happiness, we shouldn't put these arbitrary brand new pieces of social wisdom that people before the year 2003 would have said that's crazy talk.
Yeah. And I think you're getting into this a little bit already, but one of the things that I was reading about is you talking about social science matters more than political science when it comes to shaping our culture. And it took me a little while to read that and understand, I think, what you're saying, but explain that to the audience when you say social science matters more than political science.
Yeah, what I mean is I don't literally mean the subject that you might take in college is more important. What I am literally meaning is that if you care about the way the future of our politics is going to be shaped, you ought to really care about how people live, because how people live determines how they vote. Okay. The future of our current politics. Okay. My old life was in the political world, worked for Morton Blackwell for years and ran his political action committees for a couple cycles. And, you're always in campaigns, you're always trying to figure out how to flip the undecideds, right? But when you get into it, of people who are actually voters and of people who are actually gettable any given cycle, okay, you're talking about a sliver of the total population that you're trying to move one way or the other. I mean, you're constantly trying to fight over moving the 47% to 50.1%, or their 52% down to 49.5%, whatever. What folks don't recognize is what a sliver that is. What I'm telling you is if you play the full game, the full football field, all 100 yards of the American population, and care more about helping them live a good life and thrive, okay, that will determine the future of American politics more than anything else, more than your TV ads, more than your direct mail campaign, more than your block walking. And hear me, I always tell people, I'm an and both guy. You need to do all of those things. I'm not telling you don't do those things. Okay, if you have to do those things. I'm telling you that if we were as strategic about helping people live the good life, right, and by that I mean know and experience authentic human love, okay, and live the deep meaningful relationships of love in marriage, of raising children, of finding the deep meaning that only comes from a relationship with God, that will produce life outcomes that lead to generally a variety of things. We know more human thriving, better upward mobility, better, lower rates of incarceration, better educational attainment, lower mental health issues, less loneliness, all of those things. It'll also create a healthier politics for our country, right? For those, who understand American political voting, there's a big gap in lifestyle in general and on average between the American left and the American right. You can sort by things like church attendance. They call it the God gap. There's a big gap in general amongst people who go to church, right? There's another big one, which is current marital status, right? That's those who are married and those who are unmarried. Another one that I've been looking at since 2012, 2013 is family of origin, right? Were your parents married? Did they divorce before or after 18? Did they never marry? That also has a huge influence, meaning long-time factors in influencing your worldview, right? Those factors are fundamentally in the home. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested as a conservative thinker about like, how do we go beyond the 3 or 4%, 7% of the American population to influence long-term thinking, right? We ought to care about if are people thriving. And so that's what I mean when we say social science is more powerful than political science.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen, I've read about what you did in Jacksonville, Florida, or your organization did in improving, how many people are staying married. 24%, 3 years sounds like the sort of promise that some crazy person makes and never fulfills. How did Jacksonville improve or reduce its divorce rate by 24% in such a short time?
Yeah. And setting the table for that, I think it's important to recognize Jacksonville, Florida was ranked by Men's Health magazine as the 6th worst city in America for marriage before we got started. The Huffington Post wrote an article before we got started that said, these are the 10 cities where marriage goes to die. And that one of them was Jacksonville, Florida. It had never had a divorce rate lower than the state average divorce rate for any county in the state of Florida, post no-fault divorce in Florida. So we were going into some pretty rough cultural headwinds. And we had a certain basic assumptions that life fundamentally changes person to person through relationship. And so we wanted to scale the number of life-changing relationships that could exist in the county. And number two in that is there is an area called marriage and relationship education. There's knowable skills for people to thrive and be happy in marriage. We wanted to scale the number of people practicing those skills to have a healthy relationship. We had a great partner, my friend Richard Albertson, and his board chairman, Dennis Stoika at Live the Life Ministries. We partnered closely with him in reaching 93 churches across Duval County, and moving 58,912 people through 4-hour or longer skills-based ministry over 3 years. We baselined it, Kurt, before we got started. Our board said, you got to baseline. We got to understand what's our marginal impact. And there were only 300 units of consumed relationship skills ministry consumed in all of Duval County before we got started. And that jumped to 58,912 over 3 years, right? So heavily saturated around people between the age of 24 and 40. And it was through while we didn't exclude it only to local churches, it was all the vast bulk, most effective stuff was delivered through churches. And then we saturated the county with digital outreach, focusing on folks who looked like they were at higher risk for marital breakup, using developing some models around that. And the net was the divorce rate dropped sharply by year 2 and dropped 24% over 3 years. And so that was super cool, an amazing win. We didn't know how to scale it. And the next few years, we're thinking through how to scale that in a more affordable way. And we've got to the place where we realized the local church is the best unit of scale. There's, about 110,000 churches of 100 or more people in the U.S., 25,000 of 500 or more people. So instead of scaling through cities, what we realized, that's our unit. That's the powerhouse of culture change. It's the church. And it obviously just so happens to be the institution that God has given us to bring his salvation into the world, right? So it's just a good that we were realizing something new that was something ancient, right?
If you're listening to this show, it's probably because you understand something most people don't. Marketing to Liberty spenders isn't just about ads or tactics, it's about trust. And in the real world, trust moves through relationships. And that's why private introductions and deal flow are such a core part of what we do.
So FastPass is a private introduction and deal flow network for Christian and conservative leaders who already have influence and want to scale fast. It's not open networking, it's intentional introductions between people who already share alignment. We've seen one client land a $25,000 opportunity from a single introduction. Another told us that FastPass has become his largest source of referrals, not because of volume, but because of fit. And yet another closed her equity round at a key moment just due to the right introduction.
When you book a one-to-one consult with us, we're not handing you a list or making big promises. Instead, we're having a real conversation about what you're building, who you want to meet, and whether FastPass makes sense for this season for you. So no pressure, no hustle, and no awkward pitch from us.
Yeah. If you're ready to grow through relationships instead of forcing everything on your own, head to libertyspenders.com/FastPass and book a one-to-one consult with us.
In worst case, you leave with clarity. Best case, the right introductions change the trajectory of what you're building.
Okay, back to the episode.
What? Understand this idea that there are skills that people can develop to improve their marriage. What are a few of the things? A couple listening right now saying, okay, I need to get better at this marriage thing. What do I need to be focusing on? Where would you have them start?
Yeah. So if you're already married, a big thing, there's 5 interpersonal skills and 5 intrapersonal skills revealed in the research. Is like, if you're good at these 10, you're going to be really good. I'll rattle through them quickly, and then I'll just give an example on a couple, right? So, communication skills, conflict resolution, emotional intimacy, togetherness skills, and relationship management skills. Those are all the interpersonal skills, being good at relating to the other person. Okay. Intrapersonal skills are like inward, like you being good, like inward level of health, right? Those are discernment skills, really important if you're looking at discerning whether or not to marry somebody. Appreciation skills, self-control is a big one. Expectation skills, and commitment is itself a skill. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as a couple, you think, okay, one simple one on that list, intrapersonal appreciation. Okay. I can't tell you, we know this from basic Christian spirituality, being grateful to God is an important part of an orientation of a Christian. And you find someone who's grateful, you're happy. You'll find a happy person. Yeah, okay. So in one of the things that we work is one of the first and simplest things. What are you grateful for in your spouse? Because I can be it's easy for me to think she's always nagging me. She's always after me. Like, look, I'm tired, long day. I left the socks on the ground. I didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher or whatever, right? I can think about what is bothering me about that other person. Each day, taking a moment to think, what am I grateful for what my spouse has done? Right? Maybe she ran an errand for me that I couldn't do. Maybe she picked up our kids, right? Even though I think of this as something that she has to do, there are children, okay? And the fact that she's pouring into them, am I grateful for that, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it might be, okay? That it's taking a moment, even a couple minutes each day, and it can reorient how we might mentally approach that next conversation, okay? Setting, in communication, doing this well, related to another one of those, which is togetherness. Those two together, it's how do we set shared expectations, right? Very frequently, the biggest arguments are simple ones because I expected something else. Okay. Right. If you've ever heard, this is not at all what I expected. This isn't what I signed up for in marriage, right? Okay. That is getting at an emotional feeling of betrayal, not betrayal in the sense of infidelity, but betrayal emotionally of like, I expected X and I got Y. Okay. Being able to be together, like where you think, okay, dispassionately, what are the things that need to get done? How can I help you today? How can you help me today? And let's be able to have a conversation about it. One of the, the best tools that I love to use is there's different resources have this, some sort of daily temperature reading, a discussion prompt, might be a card you go, we're going to tick through these 5 items together for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And it's us to step out of our lives and step into the relationship, like step out of our lives for a moment and work on a relationship with a quick conversation where we think about first, what do we appreciate? And then share what's going on in our life. What are the puzzles, challenges that we're working on? How do we address those? How can we share that burden together? how do we deal with things that are a problem that the other person is doing and creating for us, you know, and then being able to close that time with a brief time of prayer together, just for a moment. Can I pray for you? That's an example of a simple daily check-in that a couple can do. And I'd encourage any couple to, once a year, once every other year, find a skills class, some sort of skills class you can do. And you don't do it because there's something wrong. Okay. You don't create an analogy with the spiritual life. If somebody at your church said, "Hey, look, do you want to go on a retreat? I want to invite you. We're hosting a spiritual retreat." You wouldn't say, "Oh, no, Kurt, I'm already as holy as I possibly can be. I can't."
Right.
But that JP guy, he needs it. He needs to grow.
Right.
But we do that frequently in our relationships, right? Our spouse is the best. God gave us our spouse as a means to work out our salvation, right? Our spouse is going to help us on our journey. And so investing once a year, every other year in a retreat, a skills class, something of that nature that you can practice some skills will help you a ton.
Yeah. I can definitely see the value of it. And, no different than the continuing education we're all supposed to do for our careers, right?
Yeah. And you got this this device, this iPhone, and you can't. I tell pastors we're at a moment of anthropological anarchy, right? This is we are experiencing a cultural revolution where the evil one has gone after the sexual embrace, gone after the marital embrace, gone after the very idea of what is the human person, what is man, what is woman, okay? And we can't just glibly go through life as if none of those things are happening. We have to recognize that we're swimming in the same these cultural waters. And I think it's really important for pastors, churches, couples to take, those threats seriously in our own life, how it just plays out, right? Like the fact that we have the full internet at our disposal at any given moment is great for a zillion reasons, and it's terrible for a zillion reasons, right? And being able to gird our loins, right? And be ready for the spiritual battle that's in front of us, right?
Absolutely. I think that's powerful that we be thinking about how we as a church can help on this issue. I think this is a good time to rewind a little bit, because it sounds like you started doing something else. You were doing some political work, but what got you so interested and passionate about helping families and marriages? What's the journey that you've been through to get you here?
Yeah, Kurt. Yeah, I like a lot of people, I was raised in a great home and motivated to love Jesus, and was interested on the life issue. Came to Washington, D.C. to try to save babies on the life issue.
Right.
Motivated on conservative issues, and over time got more involved in the economic freedom issues, and started to look around at what was going on. We had a tragedy in our family where a close family member's marriage failed. It was an abusive marriage, and her 4 kids, she had become homeless, called my wife and I, asked if we would take her kids in. They were 10, 11, 14, and 15. And they were in our home the next day, and just saw what happens when families fail, and ended up being a long-term situation. And God started to use that in my life to redirect what I was really caring about. And I started to see this professionally. So I started looking at things like crosstabs, after in exit surveys, and understanding actually there's a growing divide between really the lived out experiences of people based on both political parties. And I started to recognize that a lot of the stuff that we care about in politics and public policy is really downstream, driven by and either made worse by or caused by the breakdown of the family and the breakdown of the soul forming institution of the church. And so I just became really interested in trying to find, hey, what if we applied the same discipline and business acumen that we apply to the biennial cycle of elections, and said, hey, that's less important than the eternal outcomes of salvation. What if we took some of the strategies that lived elsewhere, baptized it, sanctified it, brought it into the service of the church to affect life change? And that's ended up creating the initiative that did the 24% decline in divorce and led to the creation of Communio.
So now that you're sort of past the Jacksonville thing, I'm sure you're still working there, but what's the next step in the mission
Yeah.
of improving marriages?
Yeah, look, 85% of all churches spend nothing on the area of marriage and relationship ministry, right? 91% do nothing for singles, okay? We're at a time where we have 31% less people getting married now than the year 2000 and 65% less people getting married now than the year 1970, right? All of this speaks to we're facing very quickly an existential threat to American civilization and Western civilization. So the next big push is we want to mobilize the church. We call it the national strategy to save the family. Okay, we want to mobilize the church to share the good news of Jesus Christ through the felt need of healthy relationships, marriage, and the family. And to get there, by the end of the year 2030, we want to be at 16% of all churches of 500 or more people implementing the learnings that we have found in a data-informed approach to relationship and marriage ministry. And we've set out a 2-phase endeavor that just phase 1 ended last year and called for making the major investments in the ministry to be able to scale rapidly and hit certain key exit criteria. And we did that. We set out to, by the end of it, to have 385 churches that would have implemented our model. And now we ended that at 416. We grew substantially, where we grew over the last year even by about 50% in revenue, and nearly doubled the number of churches that we work with. But the next step is reaching that more rapid scale. We've begun contracting partnering with regional church networks, right? We've got some great partnerships that just got going with the Texas Baptists, okay, a network of 5,300 churches across the Lone Star State, the Arizona Mission Network, which is the Southern Baptist Network in Arizona, as a for instance. We've got some big statewide partnerships with the Center for Christian Virtue, as an example, Family Policy Council out there in Ohio, that have a large network of churches through their Church Ambassador Network. We working closely with the Family Leader. We'll have a contract there and a network of churches there that we're growing. We now have these partnerships with networks of churches representing more than 19,000 churches across the country. Those networks are working with us to grow adoption through their member churches. And fundamentally, if we hit our number on phase 2, Kurt, that's targeting Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point, that 16% threshold, where an idea begins to spread like wildfire, right? And we want to make it so normative that churches are evangelizing, reaching out into their communities through this. There's so much loneliness. There's so much isolation. We think we can build authentic, in real life community through the local church, helps get more people married, help people thrive in their marriages, because fundamentally, we believe one generation of Christian marriage, well lived, will transform the nation and transform the world.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned single people just now, like more people getting married. So let's talk about that a bit, because I do agree, and you probably have the stats all, memorized, but people are getting married later, right? Or being told, to your point, to not get married. They're delaying it. There's, it's far more common for couples to want to live together for years. I've heard Jordan Peterson address this, the idea that, the try before you buy method isn't always best, but what would you say to single people about, hey, you should, how should you think about getting married? How should you think about cohabitation? How should you think about some of that stuff? That's far more common.
This is a fundamental, great question. So I think first, I want to talk first to the pastor, then I'm going to talk to the single person. Okay. Right. First thing is, we are losing our base. I use an analogy from my old political life, right? If you are the nominee for a national party for president, and you come out of the party convention and you're only winning 52% of your base, okay? Right. And then your campaign whiz-bang expert campaign manager says, I got this great plan to win over independents. You should probably fire him immediately. because there's no way that you're going to win the national election with only winning that much of your base. Okay. You have to have a plan to win the base, get to 90%. And I think fundamentally, in this analogy on marriage, we can't look, there's a lot of challenges. We can't overly worry about, the first step isn't to convince the co-ed at Berkeley not to have a 30-person body count. Okay. Like we're not going after somebody who's so far out there ideologically that they're not gettable at the moment.
Right.
Okay. God can reach anybody, but if we're thinking strategically, our base is those showing up in the church first, and then you reach out, you grow from there. You got to win your base, and we're losing too much of it. Okay. So that there's a concerted, deliberate effort that needs to take place where pastors are sharing the vision of the beauty of marriage and the beauty of sex within marriage. Okay. We've developed some great pastor facing resources to preach and teach to singles and the whole church so that young people are aspiring and intentionally seeking out marriage. And those few big things is complementarity. Okay. It's biblical, right? We are literally, as a guy and a gal, are biologically created to lack something that is only there in the other sex. This is part of the enemy's attack on our anthropology, right? So part of the church needs to be teaching about complementarity. The happiest people in our country are those who are married. Okay. And young, like what we now call young marriage, which I just call normal marriage. Okay. Those are the happiest people. Okay. If you are concerned about future loneliness, long life, more sex, a more satisfying sex life, right? The reality is those who report having the most satisfying sex life in America are church-going women, actually. And both church-going men and church-going women have 65% of them report having sex at least once a week, whereas non-church-going married, talking of course about church-going married men and women, non-church-going married people are reporting having sex once a week at well under half of them, right? So by every measure, we need to know the stats there, okay? And then with young people, okay?
Yeah.
In talking with young people, okay, those messages need to be out there so that they are prioritizing. They're not thinking that, hey, I'm young. I'm too young to get married. I'm 24.
Right.
No, you're not too young to get married. That's a perfectly normal age to be serious about relationships. Okay. So we talk, on a practical basis about, north of half of young men about the age of 25 have not asked a young woman out in person. Okay. This is a challenge. So we talk about seek out relationships in real life. Okay. Dating apps. This is not a moral judgment against dating apps. Okay. But they tend to discourage and diminish commitment because you approach the relationship as a consumer good. And you can always keep swiping and find, there's 300 more matches on the app. Okay. So prioritize finding places where you can interact with members of the opposite sex in a safe environment, right? I give an example of, we've worked with great churches that organize young adult sports leagues where there are mixed gender settings. Okay. There's a good number of young men and good women, a good number of young men and women showing up. So seeking those out, then as a guy, ask a girl out. Okay. And be clear about your intentions. Do so in person or on the phone, not by a text. Okay. The expression I challenge men with is the Latin expression esto vir, be a man. Men do hard things. And sometimes that means being uncomfortable and asking a young lady out that you're interested in. Women, I think it's super important as parents in the church that we teach our young women. You don't have to, a young woman doesn't have to always say yes to every invitation. Okay. But if a guy approaches you honorably, then there's no reason to be rude. There should be kindness in even the decline. Okay.
Right.
Because odds are it took that guy a lot of guts to make that request. And then as a relationship's gotten started, you have to be a careful observer on two fronts. One quickly is, how are you changed by the relationship? Okay. Every relationship will change you. Okay. And you're not going to be the same. You'll either be a better version of yourself or a worse version of yourself. If you see that you're becoming a worse version of yourself, end the relationship. On the second front, study how she, or, if you're a guy, you study how she treats those closest to her, parents, siblings, friends. When you're dating somebody, you are auditioning. Okay. You will not be treated better on average than the way she treats those closest to her. Okay. If you don't like how she's treating those closest to her, end the relationship. Okay.
Mhm.
And the last point I'll share, we go into this in my book, The Endgame. My co-author, John Van Epp, uses his relationship attachment model. It's a science-based idea of relationship attachment. There's 5 dimensions, Kurt. Think about an old soundboard. Know, from left to right. Imagine this. Know, trust, rely, commit, touch. Each knob
Mhm.
goes up and down. And I ask young people, what does the world want? Which knob does the world want you to go up first? And everyone's like, yeah,
Right.
touch, sexual touch right away. Okay. Well, think about this. No bonding dynamic is separate from the other. So if you move
Right.
sexual touch up, it will pull up other dimensions and dynamics, whether you like it or not. So once you
Right.
move to sexual touch, you will emotionally feel like you rely on them more and trust them more, even though you don't know them and you haven't committed to them. Okay. So if you
Right.
want to understand why after a too quick into a sexual relationship, you're feeling emotionally out of sorts, it's because we're
Right.
giving something intended for somebody else permanently, and we're giving it to them very quickly and cheaply, right? So you
Yeah.
never, the rule there with those dimensions is you never move a knob on the right above a knob that's on the left. So you don't trust someone more than you know them. You don't rely on them more than you trust them. You don't commit to them more than you rely on them already. And you don't move to sexual touch until you're fully committed, right? And so,
Yeah.
if you keep the knob on the left
Mm.
always higher than the knob on the right, you're going to be in a safer spot in your relationship, right?
Mm.
Some of the basics there for single people as they think about their relationships.
Yeah. Well, before we get into our lightning round, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share. So there's some people listening, they're involved in church or they care about what you're saying. How do people get involved in what you're doing?
Contact your pastor and have
Uh-huh.
him reach out to us. But simply go to our website, communio.org. You can sign up for a free newsletter. Okay. I would download on our main page. There's a research tab. There's a free study on there. It shows in that free study you can download, read it yourself, have your pastor read it. It shows fundamentally that the decline in Christian faith in the United States is driven by the decline of marriage. The decline of marriage started about 20 to 25 years before religious non-affiliation grew, and they're closely related. So if we're concerned about, if your pastor is, as he should be, focused on the gospel and Jesus, then he's going to be far more effective at bringing people to Jesus and advancing the gospel if you help people live out well the covenantal sign of salvation, which is marriage. And that's the most common sign used in scripture to describe God's love for his church and his people, is marriage.
I love that. And we'll repeat that. We'll get all that in the show notes as well. But now we're coming close to the end. I want to go into what we call our lightning round. And we ask every guest the same 3 questions, about 90 seconds each. First one is about legacy. As you're hopefully decades from now looking back on your life, how will you know you had a life well lived?
Yeah, fundamentally, more young sons and daughters, growing up in homes feeling safe, surrounded by the love of a mom and dad and Christ, right? And seeing that become, we've got a BHAG at Communio that by the end of the next decade, we want to cross back over 50% of all adults growing up, reaching adulthood in a home with a continuously married home. Okay. It's a minority now are doing that. A majority at the end of the next decade of Americans will reach their 18th birthday with a married mom and dad in the home. That's the legacy we want to see. And we know that will produce some tremendous fruit of more people encountering Christ and more people receiving the gift of salvation.
Yeah. Powerful. But now for something completely different. 90 seconds on a topic that's been interesting you lately. It just can't be on topic. So maybe it's a hobby you're into, sports team you're a big fan of.
I guess, man, we could go sports, or we can go where many men have gone recently. And I just finished Caesar's Gallic Wars and his Civil War. And I think I'll go there briefly. I think growing up and maturing is recognizing that Pompey, Cicero, and Cato, while there's a lot of good there, is to recognize they weren't actually the good guys at the end of the day of where things had gotten in late and corrupt Republican Rome. So that maybe that's more for later. College football is the other great is my other great love, and we can get if we can figure out this NIL stuff. Okay, Kurt, we gotta get to contracts. We got to get labor contracts for our players, and this idea that you're you get paid $1 million in college, but you're actually not an employee, and you can just become a free agent almost whenever you want every 6 months. That's outrageous. We gotta fix this, Kurt. It's maybe the greatest plague facing our country after the collapse of marriage.
Well, college football has come on in a big way here in Indiana after IU's big
look at them
last year. But Coach Tommy Tuberville has been a client of ours for years, and he was a giant opponent of the change in the way things are operating in college football. He said it would ruin the sport. We do see some craziness as we speak right now. The big story out of IU is the player who showed up last week to his first practice with gold-plated cleats.
Yes.
Signetti talked about, he says, I don't know that he's been, I think the quote from Curt Signetti was, I don't know that he's been yelled at like that in a long time, or maybe ever.
Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah. Well, he's a personality. I'm pumped to have him at IU.
He's an amazing. Oh my gosh, I'm a Gator, and one of my biggest. I think we waited 1 year too long to fire Billy Napier. I think the data was there. I think we should have parted ways and backed up the truck to gone after Kurt before his national title run. But don't know that we would have gotten him. But he's an amazing. Like Curt Signetti is doing things that nobody thought was possible, and pre-playoff era wouldn't have been possible. Like you couldn't have. Yeah. It's just amazing what you think about it. Like as a SEC guy, like Tommy Tuberville, it's like it's worse. It's more unimaginable having Indiana win it than having Vanderbilt win it. And as an SEC guy, it's like, because Indiana's won less games as a program in its history than Vandy. It's like, it's incredible what he's done. It's really amazing.
It is incredible. I could do 40 minutes on, I wish the attitude of success could be replicated in our Indianapolis Colts, who seem to be determined to be mediocre. But we'll see.
Yeah, totally.
And let's end with our last thing is the easiest. 90 seconds for people who may not have heard everything we've just talked about in the last 45 minutes. Who should get in touch with Communio? Who do you serve? How do you serve them? Give the 90-second pitch.
Yeah, so Communio exists to equip the local church to share the gospel of Jesus Christ through the renewal of marriage, right? It's for singles, it's for married, it's a full church ministry. For youth, young adults, those seriously dating, the engaged, the married, and those struggling, right? Everybody, it's a full church concept, right? And so anybody who's in church, think about it. You look out on the world right now, you see a lot of hurt in our communities. You see a lot of struggling. Okay, and you might be in a church that itself has struggled to gain members, gain traction. Okay, you're not alone if you're seeing that, because what the church is trying to work inside of is a culture that is at war with Christian anthropology, right? And there's so much suffering and loneliness and isolation as a result, right? If the church can be that place, your local church can be that place where people learn to love and learn to love well and do so in a way that applies very best practices, right? Evidence-based strategies that have transformed entire communities, right? Then we can bring healing to and through your community, to and through your church. And when we hit a critical mass of enough churches living that out, fundamentally, that'll bring about a restoration of the health of our republic, right? And so I'd encourage anybody who's listening to take the time to go to communio.org, and you can contact us. A simple email address, questions@communio.org. Okay. And we can get in touch with you, set up a meeting with with a church engagement specialist who will be able to see how we can, just have a free consultation, see how we can help and support your church.
That's awesome. JP, it's been great to have you on. I'll say it again. Check out and find more about Communio at www.communio.org. You can find JP there. If you're a church leader, reach out as they expand their ministry. And for those of you who are just tuning in and enjoyed what you heard today, we invite you to like and subscribe so other people can find us. And if you want to learn a little bit more about what we're up to, check us out at www.libertyspenders.com. We're so excited to have you. And until next time.